My memories of the time I was in the military weren't really active duty other than training, but I was a reservist, and I initially started out with the 47th Aero Med Evac that's stationed out of Minneapolis International Airport. What that is a medical crew of about 5 people, and we flew in C-130. So I had flying status, which was, I mean, that was really great being in the Air Force. I was a part of a medical crew of 5 during Desert Storm. We were being ready to be shipped out. We were going to do hot loads from air bases out of Saudi into Rhein-Main Air Force Base in Germany. However, since the war ended so quick, we were stuck down at Kelly Air Force Base in Texas, so we stayed there 10 days and basically just kind of hung out with them. I fell in love with this woman who was my commanding officer. I remember reporting to her, you know, every day I saw her, it was like, yes, ma'am. And 31 years later, now we're married, and to this day, I still am yes, ma'am. So the military, I met my wife out of the military, which is a wonderful thing. Because of the fraternization rules at that time, the 4th Air Force was coming down heavy on fraternization. I was enlisted at the time. She was an officer. And they said, one of you has to get out. And I said, that would be me. I already had a college degree, so I walked across the street, so to speak. And the Army Reserve gave me a direct commission as an officer, and I spent the rest of my time in a medical, as a medical platoon leader in different units, with an armor unit where there was Abram tanks, and then ended up becoming an instructor when I had relocated to San Antonio at Fort Sam Houston. I was literally teaching military people, Army personnel across the entire world that came to Fort Sam, teaching them to instruct, believe that or not. Wonderful job. I had people from 2 stripes up to 2 stars, as you know, one of those things, you know, it was an interesting time with them. I think one of the biggest things that still to this day, it's gonna choke up now. When I hear the national anthem, I can't sing it. I can't, because it's so emotional to me. There were so many men and women that have passed over the years because of their giving their life to serve in the military, and to think that I was able to wear that uniform and represent the United States Department of Defense. So I was walking into this front the other day, that doesn't happen, and I saw the flag up there, and it was just like, wow, there's that flag. It's like, so there's a lot of emotion. If anyone is thinking about joining the military, it's life-changing, it's a commitment, and you'll learn more about yourself than you probably realize that you're capable of doing. The military, obviously, they push you to a level that you just don't know you had in you. And you come out, you hurry up and wait, you'll hear that. And I've very, very, very few times that I'm late for anything now being out of the military. So that was one of the things, the disciplinary. It's also really cool to be a part of so many people, like, you know, the other military former veterans here that here on staff at Mahtomedi, just to know that, I know that person served, I know that person served, and there's like this really cool camaraderie that we have as being veterans. So.
Hi, my name is Jim Lane. I enlisted in the United States Navy right out of high school in 1998, and I was enlisted until 2004. I joined the military because I was not ready to go to college, just mentally. I also did not want to pay for college. I knew I wanted to kind of get out and see the world and really test myself and get to know who I am before I went back and went to college. That said, I always know I wanted to get out and be a high school biology teacher even before I enlisted. So I used the Navy and my experiences there as a tool to prepare me for college and give me a whole lot of money to attend school. I started my enlistment at boot camp in Great Lakes, just north of Chicago. I then went to my first school down in Charleston, South Carolina, where I studied nuclear power and nuclear physics. I then went up to Ballston Spa, New York, in upstate New York, where I studied working on an actual nuclear reactor. So that's my job in the military, was to work on and maintain the chemistry in reactor plants on a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. So my job really required me to sample the water going through the reactor and the steam plant and make sure all the radiation and contamination levels were accurate, but also to maintain the chemistry in a reactor. So I needed a lot of science background, a lot of math and engineering. They say that in about a 2-year period, you earn the equivalent of a 4-year degree. So it was an intense school. I was doing about 80 or 90 hours a week in school and studying. So I would usually get to my classroom about 6 in the morning, and I would leave at 9 at night, and with class time in between there. After I got out of school in 2000, I went to my ship, which was the USS Abraham Lincoln. It was stationed in Everett, Washington State at the time. So I drove all the way across country from New York to Washington and stepped aboard the ship. Well, actually, it wasn't that easy. My ship was already deployed when I got to Everett. So what I had to do was fly from Seattle to Japan to Singapore, where we waited for the boat. The boat zoomed right by, so we then had to catch up to the boat in the Persian Gulf. So I then flew to Bahrain, which is a little island in the Persian Gulf, where we waited for about 2 weeks for the boat to catch up. Then I got to take an airplane from the airport in Bahrain and land on an aircraft carrier. And that was a pretty unique moment, stepping aboard a working aircraft carrier for the first time, 2 years in the Navy already, and never stepped foot on a boat, and seeing an F-18 take off as I'm stepping on board the ship. So that was a pretty cool, unique experience. That was my first deployment, and we were deployed for, it was a 6-month deployment in the Persian Gulf. 8 days after I landed on board, the USS Cole was bombed in Yemen. So we did not touch foot to land for about 3 months after that because of security concerns. So we were not allowed to go into port. We just drove around in circles in the Persian Gulf and then eventually left. Being a biologist, I think one of my favorite things to see was just going out and seeing the ocean, watching the waves, seeing fish, seeing flying fish, albatross in the Southern Ocean, right around Antarctica. Those were moments that I will never forget. Beyond that, just the camaraderie, the relationships that I built in the Navy really helped to understand myself and others. I think really building empathy towards different life perspectives and different approaches to life. You meet people from all around the country, from different walks of life that are very different than your own, and you really learn to empathize and understand those perspectives, because you are quite literally stuck with 30 different people living in very close quarters. So what does it mean to be a veteran? I think being a veteran to me represents just a sense of duty and service. I think as a teacher, I'm still in kind of a service perspective, that I'm here to serve students and the community. And I think Veterans Day is really a celebration of that service. So maybe not a celebration of individuals per se, but a celebration of that sense of duty and responsibility to our country and really to our communities. So I think Veterans Day to me really represents service and duty to the community.
My name is Keith Miley. I'm a counselor at Mahtomedi High School. I appreciate the opportunity of telling a little bit about myself in my military experience. I was in the military for 33 years. I was 4.5 years active. The rest time I spent in the reserves. I was stationed in Grand Forks, North Dakota, Arizona, and Davis-Monthan, and Homestead, Florida. Those are my 3 bases that I was mainly at. I never was deployed. I was a backfill back for the Gulf War. That means somebody from that base went overseas to fight in the war, and I provided backfill for that person's job. My job in the Air Force was a chaplain assistant, so during that time I helped with crisis intervention. I helped the chapel with accounting, bookkeeping, situations like that. And in wartime, I was the chaplain's bodyguard because they're not allowed to fire an M9 or M16. So that's what I did if I was called back to duty. The experience and the people were amazing. I'd say my greatest joy of it was probably the diversity I saw and the people all over the United States. And I think probably the theme they had most was the love for their country and service for others. They worked extremely hard each and every day, and they still do. Most people just want to thank you, or a nice kind word, or pay it forward as a gesture of what to do for like veterans. If I was to tell you anything that makes the military special is, again, all the men and women that give up so many holidays, vacations, and time with their family to go to service for our country. Again, if you have any questions ever or are interested in the military, please stop down. I don't push it. My job is a counselor, so I work with all variety of students, whether it's 4 years, 2 years, military or vocational. I think if I was to tell you anything about the people that, again, did the military, they love what they do. It wasn't a backup choice, and their passion, again, for our country was amazing. So, again, thanks, and hopefully you have a great day.
Hello everyone, I'm Justin Hahn, the principal here at Mahtomedi High School, and I'm going to speak to you today about my military service and the importance of Veterans Day. So my story began in September of 1998 when I enlisted in the Army Reserves. What's unique about that situation is that I had just started my first teaching job and recognized very quickly that my teaching salary was not enough to cover my rent and also college loan repayments. And the military was always something that I was interested in, so I contacted a recruiter. The reason I chose the Army was that they were familiar to me because a few of my extended family members also served in the Army. And so when I joined the Army, I did something that was called split option training, and where as a teacher they allowed me to attend my basic training one summer and then the next summer attend my advanced individual training. And so my basic training was held at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri, and my AIT was at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. And then I attended airborne school at Fort Benning in Georgia. My Army Reserve unit was based in the Twin Cities, so that is where I served on the weekends, but also had training around the country throughout my 7 years in the Army Reserves. So in the fall of 2002, I was sent to Kosovo as part of NATO's peacekeeping mission in the area. I had the opportunity to work with military personnel from many countries around Europe. Then in the fall of 2004, we sent a majority of our battalion to Afghanistan. And so we worked in small 3-man teams, and we had 16 teams that were on the ground at various forward operating bases stationed throughout Afghanistan. My team was flown out to that FOB, or the forward operating base, along the mountainous Pakistani border. We had roughly 120 people on that base with very basic provisions. For me and my team, it was a very different experience from what we had in Kosovo. Some of those experiences, and how the military impacted me, really that experience of being in Kosovo and Afghanistan had a big impact culturally on me. As a former social studies teacher, I was able to take the knowledge and learning back to my students. In my military job, we worked with interpreters and were on missions almost every day in Kosovo, interacting with the population of that country. In Afghanistan, the missions ranged from 3 days to almost 2 weeks. And so there was a lot of planning and logistics involved in those longer missions especially. Those interactions with the people of each country helped me understand their way of life and that we have far more in common than we have in differences. Another impact to me personally was that sense of gratitude and how these experiences have shaped my thinking. It's been almost 20 years since my last deployment. I got back from Afghanistan in the late summer of 2005, but I can't help but compare my way of life to many of those that I worked with and those lives of the nations that I helped serve in. We're not perfect here in America, but there is another place that I'd rather live. The last thing is about the friendships that were created with a core group of people that I served with. You know, today we're spread out all over the country, and we still find time to get together once a year. And I think it's that service component and the things that you go through collectively as a group of people. So I'm proud to have served with those people, and even more so to call them friends. So this kind of brings me to the importance of Veterans Day and what that really means. And it's a day that was set aside to honor all those that have served and to simply say thanks for their service to this country. Veterans sacrifice time away from their families and friends, and they miss many important moments in the lives of their loved ones. And on Veterans Day, we make it a point to remember specifically those people that served, but also the sacrifices that were endured by the people who lost their lives. So today, if you know a veteran, reach out and say thank you. That simple recognition means a lot to us.
I enlisted back in November of 1999. I was actually a senior in high school, and I enlisted in the Wisconsin Army National Guard, so that was where I lived. And the big reason why I enlisted was because I'd heard about all the college benefits. And I planned to go to college, and I didn't really know how I was going to pay for it and that whole thing. And the Guard offered 100% college tuition, and then you made money for some of the training stuff that you did as well. So I joined up for that. And then, of course, you know, if you're tracking this historically, September 11th of 2001 happened and everything changed. I initially thought, you know, I'll just do my Guard service and do 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks every summer. And that obviously changed quite a bit. When that happened, and in 2004, our unit started to kind of do some things to get ready to get mobilized. June 2004, we actually were sent to southern Mississippi, which isn't the most lovely place to spend your summer, but that's where we spent a summer training up, and then we ultimately were sent to Iraq for about a year. So it was about 18 months all in all. And it was, you know, it was a time of a lot of uncertainty. We didn't know where we were going, so there was a lot of, you know, nervousness in that regard. But, you know, in hindsight, like that was a really good thing for me, just because you kind of realize, you know, if you can do that, you can do just about anything. But we went to Iraq. We were a mobilized infantry unit, and we had an area that we patrolled about 30 miles north of Baghdad. We were about a mile directly west of the Tigris River, so we were right in that, you know, Fertile Crescent, Mesopotamia, birthplace of civilization kind of region, which was really interesting in a lot of ways. And yeah, we spent about a year there. We had a forward operating base that we lived on, and we you know, provided security for, and then we had guys doing patrols every day out through local villages and things like that, and controlling our area. And some of the stuff that we saw, I guess we dealt with a fair amount of IEDs, improvised explosive devices. Those were like a big threat to us. So we lost some people that I knew, which was really that was really tough, really kind of eye-opening in the, you know, at the time, and still is. But all in all, like in hindsight, really good experience. I transitioned back. I wasn't quite done with college at the time. I came home, and I was probably pretty different, like in terms of student, and way more mature. You know, so I was finishing up college. and I was married and I owned a home, and I wasn't like most of the college students doing their undergrad. And then I ended up a few years later up here teaching. So Veterans Day has always been special to me. It's a time that a lot of people will reach out and just say thank you or whatever, which I don't really need, but it's kind of neat when people do that. It's a time that I'll have a few friends that I deployed with, and that I served with. And it's a lot of times we'll reach out, via text message or something like that. We don't, have lost track over the years. We don't communicate nearly as often, but it's kind of always a time that people think about that and do that. So that's kind of neat. Thanks for including me in this. I think this is really neat to get kind of all these veterans that are on our staff, a minute to share their stories and their experiences with other people. So thank you.